Hi, so today we're here to present me, Cole, and David's project for the energy that we chose. And the energy we ended up choosing was hydrogen energy. Well, what is hydrogen energy? It's not a super well known one. Well, hydrogen is a potentially renewable secondary energy source. Unfortunately, it cannot be created in nature, therefore, it's known as an energy carrier. It carries the energy produced from more used sources like natural gas, wind, solar energy, some more popular ones. It then carries energy or uses that stored energy to power things like cars, trains, even planes. It does all this while producing no harmful byproducts, only water vapor. So, how do you make it? What are some common methods of creation? Well, hydrogen energy is created using any process to create hydrogen itself. According to the US Department of Energy, although today there are many different ways for its creation, about 95% of all hydrogen is created via thermal processes like the steam reforming of natural gases. This type of hydrogen created from fossil fuels is called gray hydrogen. With these sources of energy becoming scarcer and more expensive, hydrogen energy is looking to become more prevalent in the future by being created in a clean way like electrolysis. This new method would be called green hydrogen. As you can see here, this is how that hydrogen is made. This is how it's used using that thermal energy. You can see the steam and the natural gas going in, and the CO2 and the hydrogen coming out of it. And that's also the formula used to create the hydrogen in the first place. So, what is the electrolytic process? Well, electrolysis is a process in which oxygen and hydrogen are separated from water. It occurs in a machine called an electrolyzer. This machine is powered by an outside energy such as wind or solar, preferably a type of green energy. And it functions much like a fuel cell in reverse. Instead of using the energy of a hydrogen molecule, like a fuel cell does, it creates hydrogen from water molecules. It's a clean way of creating hydrogen energy, as we can use all the excess energy we have from all these other green methods to create energy to power the electrolyzer. Sadly, it's often not used currently. As I said, about 95% of energy is created using fossil fuels. But it could be used extensively in the future due to the scarcity of fossil fuels like natural gases.
So the first step of the process to create hydrogen energy is obviously the separation of hydrogen and oxygen ions. And it comes from water, so they put water in this tank and then these two magnets, really strong magnets. So the oxygen goes to the positive side because the negative ions are attracted to it, and other thing goes for hydrogen because it's attracted to the negative side. So it goes apart ways, and then it's sucked up through this tube to be distributed. And this process gets its energy from the clean energy sources that are around the world, like the windmill and the solar panels. So once it's sent out, it goes into these storage tubes. They're all over the place to be stored until it needs use. And once it does need use, it's sent off to the hydrogen filling stations, which goes into the car, obviously. And there's actually this little mini storage tank that goes in the car right here. And then this is where it's converted into a usable energy source, and then it goes into the engine where it obviously powers the car.
Now, is this even feasible? For a lot of you, this probably does not sound feasible at all. This probably sounds like a college student whipped it up, and there's no real way of getting it done. When in reality, it's actually very feasible on a commercial level due to the enormous amount of clean energy created each year. According to the California Independent System Operator, in 2022, they had 4.2 million megawatt hours of Unity solar scale and wind energy completely wasted. This was a total of $800 billion lost. So there's lots of potential, and it's very feasible to get this electrolyzer idea done on a commercial level.
So what would be required for the community? Despite seeming simple in concept, it is still a new energy source, so there's still quite a few things required in a community for it to work at full efficiency, such as decentralized production to ensure local environment. This would require an initial energy source or a way of getting that hydrogen transported in the first place. It also needs a way of converting that energy into hydrogen energy, like the steam reforming of natural gases or an electrolyzer. After that, it needs a way of storing that energy, as well as a way of using it via a hydrogen pump for cars and fuel cells. With all this, it required plenty of room for pipes going throughout the community due to transportation of hydrogen, as well as a community so hopeful for the future, they wouldn't mind lots of government spending to change the current infrastructure. Why is it a good choice for the community? For dense urban areas, it could transform public transport by converting them from a pre-existing electric system to a hydrogen-powered one. It would also lead to cleaner air and reduce pollution due to lack of emissions from the energy. This would help with both vehicles and manufacturing of the goods. For rural communities, it could stimulate the local job market, creating a much more opportunity for jobs and a more fruitful economy due to the selling of the hydrogen energy. With this, it could lead to reduced dependency on the imported fossil fuels. For all cases, it's also easily renewable due to the hydrogen tanks it's stored in, as it could store a lot of excess energy created from the other sources. It could also create a very solid circular waste economy, meaning that it could use organic waste to power electrolysis or other processes to create the energy.
So, what is the ideal community? Well, as you can see by my cruel sketch right here, you can kind of see what our dream city would be, what our dream community is. Well, it is a big, progressive, industrial city looking to decarbonize. That's our big goal. That's the perfect community for this type of energy. We would need a dense urban city, like I was saying. There'd be high energy demand. It'd be a transportation hub, so we could revolutionize that transportation system, less CO2 levels, be able to power it with hydrogen. There'd also be an energy surplus in the air due to the density of the city, so we'd be able to use all that surplus energy to power the electrolyzers, therefore create a more green environment. And there'd also be some supportive infrastructure, so we wouldn't have to completely tear up like a suburban place. We could use the already pre-built pipe systems and all that stuff in the cities to fund this hydrogen idea. And we'd also need a city that has some green mandates like Vancouver. So what this does is it's the city's kind of funding projects that promote more green energy solutions, green solutions in general. And last but not least, we would want a city that is willing to go through with like a circular waste economy, kind of like what Cole was talking about.
So who would it affect? In the end, the implementation of hydrogen energy would affect the average consumer due to the constant changes and new lifestyle. The government would also be affected due to the enormous budget that this implementation would require. The labor force would also be affected due to all the new jobs that would be created, as well as the industry due to the newly decentralized production. And finally, the environment would be affected due to the constant construction for the worst of it, but in the end, it would be for the better.
So we've kind of gone over what hydrogen is, but is a good fuel? For starters, what is the characteristics of a good fuel? Well, according to Anna University, the characteristics of a good fuel are as follows. Is it cheap? Is it readily accessible? Is it safe? Does it have a high calorific value, which is pretty much how much energy is produced compared to what was needed for its creation? Is it easily controllable? And is it renewable for the future? Well, in this case, hydrogen kind of checks some of these boxes and kind of doesn't. It's not cheap. It's actually very expensive. It's not super readily accessible, but it is safe. I will say it is very safe. In fact, according to the NRDC, while no fuel is 100% safe, green hydrogen, specifically green hydrogen, has been shown to be safer than conventional fuels in a multitude of aspects. There's also the high calorific value, which it definitely is. Hydrogen is very powerful in that field. It's also very easily controllable. And is it renewable? Well, for green hydrogen, like with electrolysis, it's extremely renewable because we're using all that excess energy. But for what it is right now with all these fossil fuels, it's not really renewable at all. So it's a bit of a mix for that one.
So what are the advantages? Well, according to the Basque Research and Technology Alliance, the green hydrogen economy could provide 18% of the global energy demand. It could generate 30 million jobs by 2050 and generate 2.5 trillion annual revenue worldwide. This means that having hydrogen energy as a primary energy source could lead to both labor market and economic growth, all while fulfilling a large portion of the global energy need. In the future, it could be a highly effective fuel source, and the main advantage to this is that it uses only clean energy, and that means it eliminates emissions. So what are the disadvantages? Well, as of right now, it's extremely expensive, especially for the average consumer. According to Stillwater Associates, in 2021, hydrogen energy was $8.50 per kilogram to $10.80 per kilogram more expensive than your average gasoline. It's also extremely difficult to replace the current infrastructure due to the high use of gasoline and other fossil fuels on a daily basis. Also, while having many safety procedures to prevent this, hydrogen gas is still extremely flammable. And finally, while having lots of potential in the future, currently 95% of hydrogen energy is made using non-renewable resources.
What would be the impact on the environment if it was produced? Hydrogen energy production can affect the environment in both positive and negative ways. On the positive side, burning hydrogen doesn't release carbon dioxide, which could lead lower greenhouse gas emissions if it came from sustainable sources. However, steam methane reformation and other up-to-date ways of producing hydrogen energy are very toxic and would play a huge role in climate change. The reason for this being is indirect greenhouse gas emissions. There is hydrogen leakage during production and could worsen it in global warming. The production process involving emissions could cause leaks, could have a significant impact on the environmental damage of hydrogen energy. Efficiency in the hydrogen energy industry. Hydrogen fuel cells in combined heat and power systems achieve great efficiency rates, even up to 60%. This energy efficiency is approximately 25% higher than combustion engines and 35% higher than the conventional power plants. Converting hydrogen into electricity using fuel cells can reach an efficiency rate up to 50 to 60%. Sustainability of hydrogen energy. Hydrogen energy is not a major energy source. Instead, think of a flexible energy transporter. In the production process, it provides information about if it's renewable or non-renewable energy. Green hydrogen is an example of renewable energy since it's created with renewable energy sources like solar and wind. Gray hydrogen, on the other hand, is not renewable because of the fossil fuels it uses. Hydrogen's clean burning characteristics and goal to decarbonize industries make it a promising long-term fuel. However, there's things like high manufacturing costs, the requirement for infrastructure, and the reliance on fossil fuels for production. These factors can harm the idea of using hydrogen energy as a long-term fuel. So, will there be a future in hydrogen energy? Despite its shortcomings, hydrogen energy has a big future, with many big players behind it. According to the government of Canada, as part of its commitment to build a clean hydrogen economy started in 2020, by 2050, they intend to supply up to 30% of its energy in the form of hydrogen and become one of the top 3 clean hydrogen producers globally.
General opinions. We think hydrogen energy is very good for the future and currently has a lot of intrigue behind it. However, we think it needs time to become cheaper and have more research behind it. Right now, it's not worth it for a myriad of reasons, including the use of fossil fuels in its development, the extreme costs, and the amount of changes in the current infrastructure that it would require.
And then here are all our sources here. Thanks for listening.